Guys, are you a fan of Palo Santo? Do you use the Palo Santo to burn as incense? Do you enjoy Palo Santo in fragrances? Let me know, put a comment down so I can find out. While you're at it, let me know what your favorite Palo Santo fragrance is. Well, guess what? I have a bunch of fragrances that feature Palo Santo. Not everything, I don't have everything here, but enough amount of the fragrances that feature Palo Santo to put together a top 10 list. This is an unranked list, but if you're curious to learn about Palo Santo and fragrances, then please stay tuned. Thanks so much for tuning in. This is Sebastian. Yes, we're talking about Palo Santo and fragrances today. I've seen this note become very, very popular and hip lately. In fact, not only do I see it in fragrances, I also see it in other products like lotions and hand care, body products and shampoos and things like that. So I feel like it's very, very trendy. A little bit about Palo Santo for you. Palo Santo means holy wood in Spanish, and Palo Santo has a very aromatic smell to it, but it is a very woody profile. Palo Santo also is fresh with a touch of citruses and a bit of mint. It's related to frankincense. You can burn the sticks like incense. So I like the fact that it says it's very aromatic and also has a hint of citruses with mint, and I can see now why they would use this woody note to mesh with other fragrances, to kind of like, perhaps when they use it in fragrances that feature citruses, it might enhance the citrusiness and of course the aromatics. But we've got some very interesting fragrances here. A lot of them tend to be woods focused, so they've meshed the Palo Santo with other woods. But we do have some fragrances that kind of go into the gourmand direction, so they've added some milky notes or vanillic notes, and of course we've got a couple that are cherry focused in this video as well. But mostly they're all woods profile. So why don't we go ahead and get started. The first one I'm going to talk to you about is a very recent launch from the house of INITIO Parfums. It's Paragon, this one right here. I would call this more of a plum focused fragrance, but it definitely has woods as a, you know, like a base, like it has an anchor of woods. And not only does it have like Palo Santo as a note, it also features some sandalwood and things like that. So it's definitely very fruity and also aromatic fragrance because it also features lavender, but it's lots of citruses with white sage, lavender, plum, Palo Santo, sandalwood. And as you can see, the white sage comes in. There's a mintiness here according to my research to the actual Palo Santo woods and the note itself. So it kind of enhances this kind of aromaticness, especially with the fact that it not only has the white sage and the lavender here, but this is definitely a fruity fragrance, and then it settles to woods. I think it's pretty popular. I think they've done a great job with it. It's not one of my all-time favorite INITIO Parfums fragrances, but definitely is a solid making. If you're into the idea of plums and woods and things like that, definitely try Paragon. So that's the first fragrance I'm talking to you about today. Now moving on to the house of CELINE, it's Eau de Californie, this one right here. Inspired by California, and I don't know the relationship with Palo Santo and California, but this is definitely a solid release from this house, and if you're into the idea of Palo Santo, definitely check or get your nose on this particular one. It definitely also fits in with the CELINE DNA and the cohesion of their fragrances. I feel like they're definitely very, very related to the line, and it definitely has a powdery DNA because the collection is very Iris and Orris focused, but it does feature the Palo Santo. There's a bit of freshness with Bergamot. Of course, there's that citrus here. You've got Orris, you've got moss and patchouli. So there's definitely earthy, mossy touches in the dry down here. But definitely the Palo Santo is king. It has creaminess. It's definitely very, very woody. To me, it also kind of reminds me a little bit of sandalwood and gaiac wood combined. So very, very interesting woody note of Palo Santo. When you smell this, you definitely have that freshness. The citrusiness is definitely boosted. And then of course, there's a little bit of aromatics in here, but mostly it's about the Palo Santo with the earthy woods and citruses. But we're not gonna have to forget the Orris in here as well, because I think that is the note that really kind of connects all the fragrances of this collection together. Orris is king here. Anyway, Eau de Californie, check that out if you don't know it. I do enjoy that one. Moving on to the house of THOO, or the house of Oud. This is Just Before, this one right here. Another Palo Santo fragrance, but this time it's a woods amber vanillic combo. Lots of woods, and this just before features notes of Palo Santo. And in addition to the Palo Santo, we've got sandalwood as well. And then of course we've got vanilla, amber, benzoin, ylang, myrrh, and saffron. I feel like there's a little bit of a leathery aromatic touch in here with the saffron, and definitely the resinous amberiness from the amber and the benzoin and the myrrh. And then the benzoin also contributes to kind of making it sweeter, to have a bit of a connection with the vanilla in here as well. So it's a very creamy woody creation. If you like the idea of creamy woods with ambery focus, definitely try Just Before. And this is one of the fragrances I mentioned kind of is going into the gourmand direction. It doesn't necessarily go there fully, but you know, with those notes of the amber and the vanilla and benzoin and things like that, it does feel like it's going there a bit. Now moving on to the house of Maison Violet. This is ABIME from the house of Maison Violet. This is the latest creation from Maison Violet. Definitely leans masculine, and that's another thing I forgot to mention about this particular note. It definitely feels more masculine. Any woodsy notes to me do have a very masculine characteristic, so if you like the idea of masculine fragrances, this is a note you should check out. Of course, Paragon with the addition of the plums in there might make it feel like to you that it might be more unisex, but a lot of the fragrances in this video that feature mostly woods come off very masculine to me, especially with ABIME here. But it does feature Palo Santo, it features sandalwood, Elemi resin, cedar, incense, black pepper, chili pepper. This one to me doesn't have a citrusy edge, so they've actually intensified the woods and basically spices in this one. Now you do experience the black pepper in here and also the chili pepper, but also when I'm wearing this one, I feel like there's a cumin that's stashed in there, that's hidden, that kind of comes through. Especially to me, I'm very sensitive to cumin because I love it. I love the way it smells in fragrances, and I love the way it smells in spices to eat food with. And I think this is a solid release. It's definitely not my favorite from the line, but definitely is a masculine leaning, not necessarily uber powdery. It has some light powdery touches, but focusing on the Palo Santo and the sandalwood. Solid release from the house of Maison Violet. It's ABIME. And that's the fourth fragrance I'm talking to you about. Again, this is not a ranked list. Alright, up next, going to the house of Givenchy. This is the fragrance from the collection Hotel Particulier. No, I think I should say La Collection Particulier, because they have a sub-collection in this collection called the Hotel Particulier. So this is MMW, the latest release from this collection, and it's a Palo Santo bomb, but also Palo Santo bomb with Ambroxan. So it's Palo Santo with Ambroxan, Vetiver, ISOE Super, Cedar, and Cardamom. So a bit of spice, a bit of earthiness from the Vetiver, but definitely the ISOE Super and the Ambroxan really boosts this up and makes it musky and powdery. But of course the Palo Santo is king here. It does have some light traces of citruses and a little bit of an aromatic edge to it as well. But for me, it's a really musky, spicy, woody fragrance wearing experience, and especially highlighting the Palo Santo with the Ambroxan, Vetiver, and ISOE Super. I think this one wears very bright. It's not as dark and dense as some of the others, and I feel like the brightness is accomplished with the Ambroxan. Ambroxan is a great note to add to fragrances, and this one, it works really well because I think it shines in contrast to the Palo Santo and makes it super musky, a bit of a reminder of things that other fragrances that feature Ambroxan. So it's got that going for it, like a little bit of a familiarity. But then again, you've got the Palo Santo in top form here with its prominence. So this is MMW from the house of Givenchy from the La Collection Particulière fragrances. Moving on to the house of Tom Ford, it's Ebene Fume, this one right here. Ebene Fume came out last year, and it's a dark smoky fragrance with spices from the house of Tom Ford. You know, I was a bit underwhelmed with it when it came out. I've gotten used to it, and I wear quite a bit of it, and I think it's definitely highlighting the Palo Santo wood. It's definitely perfectly situated in this particular fragrance because this is a spice bomb and also an incense bomb, and then the black pepper incense really work wonderfully together to mesh against the Palo Santo wood. So it's got leather as well, in addition to the ebony wood note in here as well. So it's a very woody structure, or a woody fragrance, but very smoky and spicy, and that coziness from the Palo Santo note comes in as well. I think there's fans of this particular fragrance. It never made it in the large 250 ml bottle, although I did hear somehow that it is out. I haven't seen it yet. It would be nice to have a 250 ml bottle, but I have seen the 100 ml bottle of this one, and it's pretty solid. As I said, I wasn't too big of a fan of it when it first launched, but now I'm kind of drawn to it because I'm enjoying the Incense Black Pepper and Palo Santo combo. So EBENE FUME from the house of Tom Ford from the Private Blend collection. Recently I did a video on Tom Ford's fragrances and the fact that Estee Lauder bought the entire company, including the clothes and everything else, because they initially had distributed just the perfumes. But if you haven't caught that video, please go catch it. Moving on to the two cherry focused fragrances with Palo Santo. First is KAYALI's Burning Cherry Love Fest, this one right here. This is definitely a cherry fragrance, but for me, when I did the cherry fragrances video, I said that this cherry kind of disappears from me and you're left with kind of a woodsy fragrance. So I like the way it smells. In fact, it smells delicious with the cherry fruitiness, but I wanted the cherry to last a lot more. But sadly, it doesn't last as long as some of the other notes in here. But it's Palo Santo with tonka beans, there's burning cherry, there's raspberry, praline, gaiac wood, ambertolide, Peru balsam. So it has some ambery touches, musky, spicy touches, and a bit of gourmand edge to it as well. Definitely very, very fruity. This is Burning Cherry Love Fest from the house of KAYALI. And the next one is from the house of Laurent MAZZONE, also featured in the cherry fragrances video. This is Red d'Amour, this one right here. And another one that might remind you a bit of KAYALI's Burning Cherry. Of course, there's a lot of fragrances that remind me of Tom Ford's Lost Cherry, because KAYALI's does a little bit, this one does a little bit. For me, this one to me is a bit more mulled wine. Cherry that's in here that has a kind of a mulled wine texture, like it's thick and a bit like grapey and a bit boozy, I said, or alcohol-y like the actual wine. But for me, this is very, very cherry dominant. It's black cherry with black leather. There's saffron, pink pepper, Palo Santo, patchouli, and tonka beans. In this one, I feel like the cherry does last a little longer than the KAYALI, and the Palo Santo might be even less of a focus in this Red d'Amour in comparison to the KAYALI. But again, it's a very cherry fragrance and it features a note of Palo Santo. So this is from the house of Laurent MAZZONE and it's Red d'Amour. I don't understand the whole connection with cherry and Palo Santo, but I think it's just the fact that this particular note, the Palo Santo note, has become pretty popular to use in fragrances, and I'm assuming we're going to see it a lot more coming up in the coming year and in the future as well. Alright, up next is a new house from France. This is D'Orsay, and this is a very complicated French name. It's NOUS AMANTS MD. So the fragrances from this house have two names. So it's the first one is NOUS AMANTS, and then you've got the initials MD there. So you can go by either. I would rather go by MD, but I wanted to say the entire name. So this is a brand that has some really great fragrances. I discovered it at in Milan at the Campo Marzio there last June, and I met with the brand last October at TFWA Duty Free. I'm really intrigued with the collection of fragrances. They not only have some great fragrances, but they also have some candles and things like that. And this is NOUS AMANTS MD. Definitely has a very prominent Palo Santo note. It's sandalwood with Palo Santo. There's bamboo, the juniper berries, black pepper, pink pepper, ambergris, cedar, and musk. Once again, we've got a woodsy bomb. It's a very, very woodsy fragrance with some light aromatics and spices. Of course, the spices are more prominent than the aromatics here. A bit of musk, but lots of woods. For me, it kind of hints a little bit at Santal 33 with a combination of gaiac from Le Labo. So more on the gaiac, less on the Santal 33, but the bamboo adds a kind of a green kind of a, what do you call it, like a succulent kind of a greenness in here, contrasted with the dry woods, because it's a dry fragrance, so that kind of contrast with the bamboo, its succulency kind of makes for this kind of dry and wet wearing experience. But a great scent if you like the idea of the gaiac fragrance from Le Labo along with a little bit of Santal 33. I'm not saying they're identical, it just reminds me of those two fragrances, like they've combined them and added some other notes or something like that, just a wearing experience. But this is a great house to check out. D'Orsay NOUS AMANTS MD featuring Palo Santo. The next fragrance we're talking about is from the house of Byredo. It's De Los Santos. This is a really solid release, guys. I really like this one. It does have a bit of a medicine smell. I don't know why, but I feel like it's the clary sage contrasted with the Mirabelle plums. Really yummy plums. I love eating Mirabelle plums. It's not very popular here in the States. I never see them. Although trees, I can find them and eat them. But the combination of the clary sage and the Mirabelle here kind of treats it like a bit of medicine. I don't know if you guys get that, like it's medicinal a bit. But the Palo Santo is really here, and then you've got lots of Ambroxan with musks. There's Cistus labdanum and of course Orris to give you the powder fragrance or powdery fragrance edge. But definitely the Palo Santo I feel like is a center stage with this particular fragrance, and the focus is Palo Santo. It's called De Los Santos, and they've done a great job with it. It's not one of the wow fragrances from Byredo, but definitely solid take on a Palo Santo fragrance. And I like the whole medicinal edge I'm getting with the fact that it has this clary sage and Mirabelle in here to give you that kind of a weird medicine vibe. Not like a full-on medicine cabinet, but a bit medicinal. I don't know what I'm getting. Maybe more like a minty kind of, a bit mouthwash kind of a thing, but not, I don't know where that comes from, but it's a great scent. De Los Santos from the house of Byredo. Let me know if you guys get that type of an experience with that fragrance. And the last fragrance I'm going to talk to you about is from the house of Carner Barcelona. It's Palo Santo. Of course, I got to feature this particular fragrance in here. This particular fragrance is going into the lactonic gourmand direction for Palo Santo as a note, and it's very creamy, smooth, and definitely very cozy, soothing fragrance. It features caramel, it features tonka beans. There's vetiver, there's Palo Santo, there's milk, there's gaiac wood, there's amyris, and there's cedar. Very, very woody, but it's creamy, it's milky, it's lactonic, it's cozy, it's super, what do you call it, smooth and, I don't know, the butteriness kind of comes in here because it's not necessarily like liquid milk, it's more creamy and thick milk and kind of buttery, and you definitely wear that when you're wearing this particular fragrance. I like the way it wears because you have this very, very woody fragrance, but it's kind of going into this very gourmand direction. It's smooth and buttery, as I said, and very, very creamy. So Palo Santo from the house of Carner Barcelona is the last fragrance I'm talking about today. Let me know if you've tried these fragrances. Let me know if you're a fan of Palo Santo and fragrances. And if you haven't tried them or you're not a fan of Palo Santo and you heard about it today, are you curious to check out some fragrances featuring this note? Do let me know. Put a comment down below so I can find out. Either way, guys, thanks so much for watching today's video. If you have any questions or comments, please do list below. Please like this video. Please share it. Follow me on Instagram and Facebook, and I'll be back with more videos very soon. Have a good one. Goodbye. Alright guys, as a bonus I have one additional Byredo fragrance for you. We've got Open Sky, and it's not necessarily featuring Palo Santo as a note very prominently, but it does feature it, and since it is featuring it, I thought I'd go ahead and you know, add it to the list of fragrances. And I'm adding it to the bonus section because it's a very difficult to get fragrance. For me, this is a cannabis forward fragrance with lots of grapefruit or pomelo in this case. So the combination of cannabis and pomelo is a really, really solid combo. I feel like they work really well together because there's a fragrance by Mugler called Fly Away that is definitely proven. That particular fragrance is very popular. I love it in the way it smells. Here it's a bit more complex with the cannabis and the pomelo. You also have vetiver, there's Palo Santo and black pepper. So it's spicy, it's aromatic, it's green and bitter, juicy, citrusy, and very, very woody. So another option is an Open Sky from Byredo. You got two fragrances featuring Palo Santo as a note, but as I said, Open Sky might be a lot more challenging to get, but you also have to be into cannabis as a note. This, to me, De Los Santos is definitely the Palo Santo fragrance from Byredo that actually deserves to be sniffed if you are into the idea of Palo Santo. Anyway, guys, thanks so much for tuning in. Stay tuned for another video tomorrow. Bye-bye.